All right. So with that, Matthias, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
So I thought we'd dive right in and just talk a little bit about where you grew up, um, what your household was like, and hey, let's talk about, since we're going to talk about sleep. Let's talk about your sleeping environment as a kid.
Yeah, so I grew up in Germany in a small town called Gevelsberg, like 32,000 population, relatively smallish. I grew up in a two-bedroom apartment with an older brother, so we shared a room. And, we had a sofa bed, and my bed would actually vanish into the furniture, and I had to set it up every night. So, we were using the space very efficiently.
Yeah.
And we were like top floor apartment, basically, under the roof, which I guess helped a little bit with the noise, but obviously could get very, very hot in the summer. Uh, I think like the street I was living on wasn't super busy, so that was good. There was certainly no airport or anything in the vicinity, so or a rail line, so that was great too. We didn't have, you know, when I was much older, there was like this tiny little bus that was actually serving our area, but we were like remote enough that there was no bus station. I think more importantly, what was for my sleep being sound is that me growing up, I had awesome parents. They were loving and caring, and I got along with them very well. And we weren't rich by any measure, but we always had enough food on the table, and I never had to worry about these things. So my dad was working, I don't know, 10, 12-hour days to bring in enough money for the family. And so, the combination of all of these, I feel that I slept very well growing up, and that allowed my brain to develop the way it did. And, that's why I'm here now, I guess.
Are there new questions that have popped up recently that you didn't expect to be asking? Any examples of that?
Well, one would be my interest in broadband noise, like white noise and pink noise.
Sure.
Because I always looked at noise as something bad, something that is interfering with your sleep and making it less restorative. And all of a sudden, I learned that there's all these people who put these white noise machines into their bedroom, or who are listening to YouTube videos all night long of rain falling against you. I said, that doesn't make any sense. Why would you introduce a noise source into your bedroom? So, of course, there are reasons why it actually could work. But I did a systematic review of the literature with two postdocs of mine, and basically we showed, yes, there's a handful of studies out there. Most of them are really low quality, and at this point we can't really say whether it's working or not. The science is simply not there. And it may actually also be detrimental. I mean, of course, noise-induced hearing loss is also a thing. Typically, in my research arena, it's not the issue. Environmental noise exposure is typically not at a level where it would cause hearing damage.
Sure.
But if you put something into your bedroom and you basically keep your ear occupied with translating that white noise the whole night long, and also actually some of these machines produce noise levels that are almost at the level where the occupational noise health limit is reached. So conceivably it could actually have long-term consequences for hearing as well. So that was like a completely new question, and we just finished data acquisition in this lab behind me, a study on the effects of pink noise. We actually chose pink noise because it's not quite as harsh as white noise, but it's broadband.
I know you've done a lot of research on different types of noise, and some of them are larger, traffic and aircraft. What are the findings that you think might be most useful or interesting where you have found conclusive answers over the course of your years on the intersection between? Yeah,
as you heard
caffeine and
earlier,
sleep.
my whole career started like at the German Aerospace Center looking at aircraft noise effects on sleep. And that was the largest study at the time that had ever been done. It was in a sleep lab, but also going into the field, into
Cool.
people living in the vicinity of Cologne-Bonn Airport, instrumenting them at night, recording the sounds in the bedroom, leaving them alone, coming back in the morning, collecting all the data, getting rid of the electrodes, etc. It was a major study. And at the time, especially, since we had this comparison laboratory and field, the most striking thing was, obviously what we found was like those response functions, the louder the aircraft noise event in the bedroom or in our sleep lab, the more likely people would wake from sleep. One interesting thing was that we thought that at a certain noise level, surely everybody is waking up, right? And that was not the case. So I think we started out like noise levels from 50 to 70 decibels. And then in later studies, we cranked it up to 80 decibels, but still even at 80 decibels, only 40% of the people would wake up.
You're kidding. Wow.
In the lab. And then if you go into the field, people still wake up, but at a much lower probability than in the lab. So again, there's this habituation again, right? People do habituate to some degree. An interesting finding is that habituation is more so at the cortical level than at the subcortical level. Meaning, there's one structure in the brain, which is the thalamus, and that has a gating function for all the sensory information that is, basically being delivered to the brain. And that thalamus can actually say, no, this, it's not worth waking the brain up for this sensory input. Already at that stage, a decision is basically made. But, it is sitting somewhere in the midbrain.
Right. It's still brain activity.
Right. But the whole like cardiorespiratory system, which is, more situated at the brain stem level, all these reactions are still like happening. And they're not profiting from that gating function, so to say. So habituation is much more at the level of the cortex than at the brain stem. So
wow,
you can still see people reacting with heart rate responses, even if they're not showing, a full-fledged awakening. We also gave them just a, sleepiness scale, and you could see that like first 2 days, they ticked off higher sleepiness marks, but then they didn't feel more sleepy.
Sure.
And there was plenty of room on the scale. It's not that they ticked off the highest categories, right? But they just got used to feeling sleepy. And that's subjectively, but objectively, we could see them deteriorate further and further and further. And that may be actually one of the reasons why we as a society are chronically sleep depriving ourselves, because we don't know how much better we could feel, how much better we could perform if we only got enough sleep, because we have gotten used to feeling this shitty after, chronic sleep. And of course, what are we doing during the wake period? We're consuming caffeine. Those caffeine is counteracting some of the effects of sleep loss, specifically alertness, because it's binding at those adenosine receptors in the basal forebrain that are very likely implicated in this whole process of feeling sleepy. But a lot of the more complex cognitive functions like creativity, risk-taking, for example, caffeine is doing very little to mitigate some of those effects. This is why, whenever politicians are coming out of a boardroom at 4 a.m. in the morning, and they finally, found a solution to the conflict, probably not the best. First of all, they all wanted to get out of that room and in bed because they're so sleepy. But also, their decision making is affected in major ways, and they probably if they sleep over that, then and they said, oh shoot, why did I agree to this?